How do you handle a weird tight end night on Monday Night Football? What do you do with a suddenly resurgent NFC South receiver? And what are we doing with the other stud tight ends that are missing in week 4 action in the FFPC? Plus, Dayo the machine, Adeseye is going to join us tonight, the co-host of the First and 15 podcast with two-time Football Guys champion Abib Agbatoba. Dayo will join us tonight because he is leading the chase for the $1 million grand prize in the Fantasy Pros Championship. We've got a great show for you. Dayo, Adeseye is here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Eric Balkman. Ferrell Elliott is joining us as well. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts right now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Hi, hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Players Championships presentation of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour here on the FFPC socials. I am Eric Balkman. You know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course, the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show and the FFPC. You can follow me and connect with me on the X at Eric Balkman. That's at ERICBALKMAN. Greetings and salutations to all you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Thank you to that great introduction, Rob. This is the latest edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Ferrell Elliott will be joining me shortly. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I are going to be discussing some issues with the Las Vegas Raiders injury report this week, how you handle the Seattle Seahawks backfield, knowing that Kenneth Walker could be on the mend and be ready to gum up the works for Zach Charbonnet, as well as a huge Packers-Vikings showdown that is going to have effects in fantasy football, not for the number 1 receiver in Minnesota, but potentially for the number 2. If you want to connect with us on the X, you can do so at hsffhour. At Eric Balkman is where I'm at. And always check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. You can post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/hsffhour. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com if you have any questions for us. Feel free to send them in now. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, X posts, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. If you are looking for action in the FFPC and are upset that you cannot do anything anymore because the season has started and draft season has ended, never fear. The FFPC Weekly Challenge is here. Go to myffpc.com, myffpc.com, and play the FFPC Week 4 Weekly Challenge. You can enter for as little as $35 or $200, and you can win up to $2,500. You can play with 10 players. You can play with 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses at myffpc.com. Remember, no stacking, only one player per team. In this format, myffpc.com is where to go. You can play in a 10, 30, or 100 team contest with the classic or slim format. myffpc.com is where to go. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live here on YouTube. And I'll tell you, we have some exciting shows planned for you over the course of the next week or so. And I will be giving you details on that as we move forward on the show tonight. Shout out to everybody hanging out on YouTube, X, and Facebook and Twitch right now. James Hicks, my good Kentucky buddy right now. Best way to start the weekend, FF Talk with Ferrell and Balky. James, I appreciate it. And he is one half of Team Porky's. Team Porky's Pig I'm trying to make it a weekly thing. We'll make sure that Team Porky's makes an appearance on the program tonight before we send you off into that good night and get you set for week 4. So the stuff that's going on in the NFL right now is very, very interesting. And some surprising stuff, some not so surprising stuff. The biggest thing I want to bring up with you right now, and take this for what it's worth. Nick Wagoner, who covers the San Francisco 49ers for ESPN.com, has reported that Christian McCaffrey is no longer in Germany. He has gotten his treatment on his Achilles tendonitis and is back in the States. Now, we don't know what the treatment was, but we do know that Kyle Shanahan said earlier this afternoon that with Christian McCaffrey, quote, we'd like to start hitting his rehab here harder on Monday, which is good. There's no report of Kyle Shanahan saying, yeah, we don't know what's going on. We're just going to give him time and see where he goes from there. This is a thing where they want to amp up the rehab, and amping up the rehab, as Martha Stewart would say, is a good thing. And if that happens, maybe he's back sooner than later. Maybe he spends the minimum amount of time on the on IR, which is great, and he's back sooner than later. But again, we're still early in the process. The biggest thing right now, don't cut Christian McCaffrey. Don't trade him for cheap in a redraft or dynasty league. At least I hold out hope that he is going to be back. Maybe as soon as week 6. I don't know. But right now I'm feeling good on their support from Nick Wagoner that McCaffrey and his rehab is going to be amped up starting on Monday, according to head coach Kyle Shanahan. That's the way I feel on it. There's plenty of other things that we need to tackle tonight before we bring in the Fantasy Pros Championship leader, Dayo Adeseye, who is going to be joining us in about 8 minutes or so right now. The guy who is going to be joining us right now is the incomparable Ferrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Please welcome him on, Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, exciting news as you and I talked earlier. You're going to actually be in attendance of that Las Vegas Cleveland game at Allegiant Stadium. How jacked are you for that game?
I'm looking forward to getting in that stadium and having a good time. I imagine we'll have a goodly group of Browns fans out there raising hell too. Long-time Las Vegas player, FFPC player John Anderson mentioned he would be in that group. So it's week 4. The Raiders are coming off a very suspect effort on the defensive side of the ball. The coach promises changes, and so we're approaching the quarter pole of our KFFSC and FFPC seasons, and it's just like our fantasy lineups. If we don't like the way they're performing, we're going to shake them up a little bit.
That's right.
I don't know how we're going to win any awards. We've got a lot of props here from James Hicks and Tom Smith. I don't know how we're winning any awards. We may get into the podcast.
Yeah, we may not win it.
But Christian McCaffrey. Don't cut Christian McCaffrey. I don't think we're going to have to go deeper.
Well, do you want to kick things off with something deep right away? We could.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Tom Smith hanging out on YouTube right now. With Davante Adams out with the Raiders, can replace him with Jacoby Myers or Darnell Mooney. So now this is interesting. We already found out that Davante Adams is not playing against Cleveland in week 4. He is out. So Tom's lineup, or on this specific team for Tom, because I know he has about a bajillion teams. If you don't have access to Davante Adams and your replacements are the replacement for Las Vegas and Jacoby Myers or Darnell Mooney, who's already had a Boffo week, at least one Boffo week with Atlanta. Ferrell, which way are you leaning right now? Jacoby Myers obviously at home against the Browns. Darnell Mooney going up against the Saints in Atlanta this week. Do you have a leaning between one of those two guys?
I do. Tom Smith has thrown us up a big old softball. We smashed that one out of the park, Balky. I'm always looking to get Jacoby Myers in my lineup. Sometimes if I can't get him in the lineup, I'll say I shouldn't have drafted so well because I sure would like to play Jacoby Myers. And so this is the perfect opportunity to play Myers. And he came off a big game last week in a chaser position at the wide receiver. Myers is the play here. I don't necessarily I want to see more of what the New Orleans defense can bring to the table. And Mooney's the third option. I think New Orleans has got a very good pass rush. Cousins may not get to that third option in that offense as much as he's just previously done.
So between those two, I don't really have a strong feeling on either one of them.
Well, let's rewind what we just said then.
Well, listen, I'm telling you, you've issued your what you feel about it. For me, it's closer because I don't view either one of these guys as a smash spot this weekend because of the matchup. Now, because Adams is out, I think Brock Bowers is going to reap most of the benefits from that. There's going to be some spillover to Myers. So while you are convinced it's Myers, I am only leaning towards Myers here. So, Tom, I think that if you are looking for advice from the HSFF Hour honchos, we're both saying Myers, but Ferrell feels more strongly about it.
I do feel strongly about it, but Balky, you are correct. And I should defer to you in the fact that you have watched more Davante Adams than possibly anyone. And you will realize what I'm going to say is already, it could just as easily be coming from you. Jacoby Myers and all. It's going to take everyone on that Raiders offense to make up for what the team will be missing with Adams.
Yeah, and I think the other inkling that a lot of high stakes players would say, oh, okay, no more Adams. It's going to be more of an emphasis on Alexander Mattison and Zamir White in the run game. I'm not convinced that is. The other thing too is in regards to that, I don't think that's all that great of a matchup with Cleveland. I think that we look at this game and I think it just comes down to this. Bowers is probably going to see 12 to 15 targets. Jacoby Myers is probably going to see, I would say, 7 to 9. He's probably going to catch 4 or 5 of them, maybe more, hoping for more. But I don't necessarily think Mooney is the guy that you want to play there either. Again, I'm leaning towards Myers. Ferrell says Myers for sure. Permar99, Bulky, is that the Moondog Rex chain you are wearing around your neck? No, this is not a pro wrestling neck chain. This is my Las Vegas Raiders neck chain that I'm wearing because we're talking Raiders to kick off the show tonight, courtesy of one John Terry, AJ, sending this in to us. He gave it to me in Las Vegas, and I'm going to wear it every time we talk Raiders on the show tonight. Let's move on and talk Carolina Panthers. Deontay Johnson is questionable for week 4 against the Bengals, according to Joseph Person, who covers the Carolina Panthers. After not practicing yesterday, Ferrell, the decision to not practice for Deontay Johnson, according to him, was that the condition of the field was not great, and he says he's playing against Cincinnati. Now, I have full confidence that Johnson is going to be playing against the Bengals, but what's interesting here is how likely is he to at least come close to duplicating what he did last week. 14 targets in the first week with Bryce Young on the bench and Andy Dalton as the signal caller there. Are we set to make Deontay Johnson a must flex at a minimum because of all those targets he saw, Ferrell? I think it continues this week. I don't think he sees 14 targets, but I bet it's darn close.
He's always going to be the key in that passing game. It's very interesting what happened in that game against the Raiders. They played 2 high safeties, and so you take the red rifle that comes off the bench, and he says, I can't believe it. You're giving this to me? This is what it is. This weekend, Deontay Johnson may have to work, and the rest of the Carolina Panthers may have to work a little bit to get open. So it'll be a different type of game. There's a lot of players, a lot of team owners that absolutely love Xavier Legette and would love to get him in the lineup. And that will be a bye week option as there's a natural thinning down of your rosters. But if you've had multiple injuries, which many people complain that they are experiencing, Legette wouldn't be a bad start as your final flex and just move everyone up. But let's hope he plays. The training staff, once again, they work around the clock to get a guy healthy.
The 49ers are in an interesting spot this week with a lot of guys hurt. Purdy is going to be playing. We found that out. George Kittle is going to be playing. We found that out. What about Deebo Samuel right now? I mentioned McCaffrey up at the top. We know he's not playing this week. But, Ferrell, what about Deebo Samuel? A guy who apparently got in a limited practice today, officially listed as questionable with a calf injury. Right now, as I look at the schedule, the 49ers are slated to play at 4:05 on Sunday against the Patriots. They're heavy favorites. They're double-digit favorites. How do you handle a guy like Deebo Samuel in your lineups, knowing that you won't get official word whether he's active or not until well after those 1 o'clock games have kicked off.
I think what we see from the 49ers and what we know from the way they can manage and coach a game and looking at the opponent. So they know who they're playing, and they're likely not to have a very challenged game. They'll want to get Deebo Samuel on the field to get him comfortable, see what he can do, and move him on if he wants, in fact, to play and if he gets a clean bill of health from the trainers to play. And we all know of packages for Samuel that they make work. But I wouldn't fall for it, especially with what we've seen with the backup running back, Mason, with Juwan Jennings. There's enough there to push the Patriots without pushing Samuel.
I also want to bring up to Joe King, by the way. Some of my lineups already look like bye weeks are here. That doesn't happen until next week, Joe, but I understand what you're saying because some of my lineups look the exact same way. If we go down to Houston, we find out that Joe Mixon is officially listed as questionable against the Jaguars. I believe Dameon Pierce has been listed as out. Comes down to Mixon and Akers in that backfield. Ferrell, this is a 1 o'clock kickoff. If Mixon is active, do you simply play him? Does Akers become flex worthy even if Mixon is active? This is a tricky situation to handle.
Based on your running back depth, I would not be afraid to play Mixon, but that doesn't necessarily answer your question. I'm looking at other options. I want to play some other options. I think there's a lot of there's some things at Houston that aren't necessarily right now. And they've got to get the quarterback back on pace. They've got to get the tight end involved in the game and catching the ball. The 2 receivers that are banged up, but they've got enough receivers to come and answer for this game. Do I expect Mixon to carry enough of a load, and do I expect the game to be rush-oriented? Not necessarily so. What I would love to play is the Houston defense in this game.
I agree, and I will be deploying them in multiple spots, no question. Chris Olave apparently suffered a hamstring injury in practice today, which is never something that you want to hear. Now, the good part about this is a 1 o'clock kickoff, Ferrell. Is it as simple as if Olave is active, you play him and forget about it, or is there a more nuanced situation where you might want to pull back on Olave, given that he might not be a full go in this game and may even be a decoy for a very exciting Saints offense right now, featuring Kamara and Shaheed that have been crushing it so far this year. I don't. Maybe this is like the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. With Chris Olave, how do you feel about this injury today?
At this point in the season, I want to play healthy players. Now look at the quarterback here, and he doesn't have to count on Olave getting open. He can go. He can pepper the ball all over the field, and he's done a good job of that. He's using multiple receivers. He's got some deep threats in the offense. Olave does not have to click for them to go in and beat Atlanta. So in that case, just like we go back to Tom Smith, who opened the show, he's got some good options there. And everybody right now should have options. So we're in a situation where I would not be hesitant to play a very good later round draft pick, because in the case of Jacoby Myers, I think I selected a double-digit later round draft pick that I like to play.
Yeah.
So ask me this question when bye week start, Balky.
Right.
We got to go with Olave, but it's a different question now in week 4, and I think that's an advantage. When are we going to talk about Juwan Jennings?
Okay, I'm not. I don't want to talk about him because
no, you talked about him all week.
Here's the thing. I will bring this up about Juwan Jennings with Kittle back, Deebo Samuel maybe a coin flip in coming back. I really don't have any interest in starting him this week. I'm very nervous about it. How do you feel about it?
I would say if you're nervous about this player, Balky, you cannot stand prosperity. This player, if you've been in a situation where last year at Caesars at our Super Bowl drafting party, Sweet 16, the player was 4 for 42 and a touchdown. Biggest football game you possibly can have. Add up that in fantasy points, Balky. What's that get to?
A lot.
No, 442 and a touchdown.
4 for 42 and a touchdown comes up to 14.2. I guess, okay, not a lot, but it's doable.
Like, well, let's round up. That's his jersey number, 15. I'm going to tell you that his jersey number is his floor. And I think that we've seen an offense here that is truly a team in the offense. And when you have a weapon like that, you're going to utilize it. And it just goes back to our summer conversations. Oh my goodness, how's Nico Collins going to get the balls to support his 2 and 3 draft? No, the good players are going to find the ball, and this player has won over the locker room, the coaches, the teammates, and more importantly, the quarterback. He's going to be, for what we paid for him, exactly what you need.
I want to get to Michael Kinzel's question here. Hi, Bulky and Ferrell. Should I start Kenneth Walker if he plays, or Brian Thomas in the flex? This is a Fantasy Pros Championship league that he's looking at right now. Ferrell, I with the rise of Zach Charbonnet, I kind of feel a little bit better about Brian Thomas. Positive game script for Thomas in this game against Houston, and I really don't know how they're going to split things up with Walker and Charbonnet on Monday night. What I do know is the Lions secondary is hemorrhaging points. Fantasy points to receivers. I think that's the way you attack Detroit. I would prefer to start Thomas over Walker, even if, we don't. The thing is, we won't know if Walker's active until Monday. So I am 100% on board with starting Thomas over Walker here this week, and I don't look back on it.
Balky, I think you're exactly correct. I would like to look further into Mike's lineup and see if there's someone else. FFPC action, maybe you've got a tight end to play. I'm not very thrilled with quarterback play out of Jacksonville right now. And these talented players that keep coming into this team, and maybe it's because we're missing the tight end, but this team, at some point, this quarterback's got to take it over and go with it. And I'm just not, we saw a game last night where Jones was somewhat successful in moving the ball without real benefit of a rushing attack, but in the red zone they couldn't score the ball. And I see that more and more and more for Jacksonville. And if I want to start a Brian Thomas, I want him to find the end zone. And I very pleased when I was drafting this year. I love Walker. I couldn't get Walker,
right? And
so I would say, well, I guess I'll take Charbonnet here. And so far that's worked out pretty good.
I would say so. Darren Urban also reporting that Trey McBride, because of his concussion, will not play in Week 4. Ferrell, are you looking at Michael Wilson or Greg Dortch as a potential flex this week in a pretty high total game for Arizona this week?
Oh, I cannot tell a lie, and Michael Wilson is probably rostered somewhere else and not on any of my teams. I love Dortch. He won me over. He's a good slot receiver. I'm looking at the tight end position there, and I'm going to acquire Elijah Higgins, and I'm going to
really
with that in the future. Yeah.
Hold on.
It worked out. It worked out to acquire Schoonmaker. Yep. It worked out when we acquired him to fill in for Ferguson, 13, 14 points. I really like Higgins, and I think you can acquire him at a cheap price and put him on the field, and maybe you'll get your 10 points, but maybe you'll get more. He can be a monster around the goal line.
So you would actually start Higgins this week, is what you're saying?
From what I understand, and in the FFPC, I love to load up with tight ends.
Right.
And if I don't get what our beloved Terp calls the hero tight end, if I don't get a hero, I like to load up with the tight ends. And even on some of those teams, it's Zach Ertz and pray for good hands. So with the number of injured tight ends, I'm looking for an advantage at the position. I think this player is the advantage at the position. And look, Chig Okonkwo is not setting any records down in Tennessee, except he looks damn good when he gets off the bus, but after that looks good standing on the sidelines, but so does Higgins.
I want to tell you about a fantasy football player who looks good, whether he is crushing it in fantasy football or whether he is podcasting on the First and 15 podcast, part of the Player Profiler family network of podcasts. He is leading the Fantasy Pros Championship right now. He has won well over a dozen FFPC leagues and in the driver's seat to win $1 million grand prize in the Fantasy Pros Championship this year. You follow him on the X at __ Dayo from the First and 15 podcast and leader of the 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship heading into week 4. It is Dayo Adeseye. Dayo, welcome into the program, man. Thanks for joining us.
How y'all doing, fellas? Sorry, I was on mute right there.
That's all right. We're doing good. You were on mute, which means you're a podcast professional. You do a great job on First and 15. Actually, while we're kicking off the interview tonight, how did, I know you and Abib do this show and a cast of characters, obviously, on this program that you guys do. How did the First and 15 podcast come to be? How did you guys get the idea for this? Because it's a great podcast, great high stakes podcast to listen to for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So it's funny. So me and Abby, and for those who are not aware, Abby actually won the contest 2 years in a row, which I think was the first time that was ever done.
Correct.
Which was kind of crazy. But me and Abby went to high school together, right? And, we play fantasy football. Like I used to commission some ESPN leagues and here play in our leagues. And, we just enjoy the sports. But so we just maybe like 2018, we saw each other out one day and I just got into dynasty football. So, hey, you need to get in dynasty. This is a new thing. It's better than what we've been doing. He was telling me about this high stakes thing. And I was like, I don't know what that's about. Tell me more. And I kind of got him a little bit in dynasty, got me a little bit in high stakes. And he ended up winning that next year. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that's cool. Let's see if I can do it the next year. He ended up winning that next year. So then we just started this like a group chat, where during the training camp or summertime, we would just kind of go back and forth with things we're hearing. Most of the time it would be something we saw on Twitter or X or whatever you call it. But the thing about our discussions is that they end up turning into a lot of arguments, right? Yeah. So we would debate like crazy and, we're both very strong-headed individuals. So we kind of put our foot in the sand and, we just kind of go what we believe in and we'll go all day. And then one day I was just like, hey, you won 2 championships. Why don't you just start a podcast, right? Like, or do a show or do something with it, right? Like you did something nobody's ever done, like do something about it. And he was like, sure, I'll do it only if you'll do it with me. I was like, okay, whatever, just kind of joking around. But he ended up reaching out to his brother-in-law, who's Chris, he's our co-host. Yep. Who, kind of is amazing with the graphics and the digital devices and the computer, all of that stuff that's kind of over my head. And we just kind of got together one day and just put the camera on and just hit record. And we just started talking. Mm-hmm. And the thing about us is, it's true, authentic, just discussion. We don't plan anything out. We don't have show sheets. I mean, we try to sometimes put them together, but honestly, we just hit play and just start talking and then eventually Chris tells us, okay, that's the end of the show. And say, okay, that's it. So, so we've been doing it. I think this is our 4th year doing it. Yeah. We typically do it during draft season because one reason, because, a lot of people are interested during draft season, but another thing, during the season, we're focused on our teams or focused on actually playing fantasy and paying attention to the sports. So, we've been enjoying it. We've had our up and downs, we've had a lot of arguments still in front of the camera, behind the camera, but it's been fun. And those are my brothers, man. And so First and 15, like y'all see on the hat.
Yeah, exactly. And what I think is so great about it is like, I hear these arguments that you and Abib have, and I think Chris is a great guy to keep things on the road, because you could tell these things are just popping up organically when you guys talk about them, like where you sometimes I think that you guys don't even realize that how much you disagree on a player or a strategy until you're actually hashing it out on air, which is really beneficial to the viewer, to the listener, because they're kind of figuring out like, oh, okay, I never thought about this aspect before. And then that makes everybody a better drafter. It makes everybody a better fantasy football player. So
you said the word bulky or you said the word organic, and
organic.
That's what's perfect is because you guys, and I see that there's a lot of our fantasy players that say, wow, he won it 2 years in a row. He must have a secret method. He must have a real great system. He must be a numbers guy. He must see things I don't see. But no, he listens when you guys are arguing. The best part about a debate is when you're listening to the other guy. And that's when you can go forward with things. And I really love the way you present that, is to have, so you've had a role in that. You've had a role in that success too. You sure don't want to surround yourself with yes men. And thank God that when he came to you and said, I'm playing high stakes, that you didn't talk him out of it. You said, oh, I got something better to do. I got no, that's a true friend. It's so good for you, man.
Dayo, the other thing I want to ask you, and my memory might be hazy on this. I don't think this is the first time you've been leading the Fantasy Pros Championship in the middle of the season, right? Haven't you been up at the mountaintop before?
So it's interesting, right? So a couple of years ago, I actually was going into the final week in second place. That was the same week DeMar Hamlin, had that issue on the field, and there was a lot of controversy in how all of that was handled.
Right.
I didn't pull it off, obviously. I had Justin Jefferson on that team, and that was the year Jair Alexander pretty much shut him down.
Right.
He's never had such a horrible performance in his life, and I still hate him to this day because of that. I'm never getting over that, by the way. If he sees it, just know we got beef. But the reason that's funny is because I didn't even know I was in first place, honestly, until I saw your email. I don't check the leaderboards. I just kind of put my head in the sand and I just kind of go. And just kind of see where the dust falls at the end of the season. And once I saw your email, and even your first email, it didn't really hit me until your second email, where you were asking me about my tournament leading. Tournament leading. Tournament leading. What are you talking about? And then I was gonna look at the standings, and I was like, oh wow, I'm in first place. Okay, so that's cool.
And you're a veteran too. I mean, you understand it's a long season, but man, seeing your name at the top of the leaderboard, I don't care what week that is a cool feeling.
It is. And we've got in Kentucky, Dale, we've got a modest 600 and something teams. And when the leader moves in there for the first time, I'll take a picture of it and I'll send it to him so he knows it's leader. But you say you don't look at the leaderboard. I look at the leaderboard all the time. Because it adjusts for the plays, and I want to see, because Balky and I were fortunate to be in this situation, so we don't know everybody, but we damn near know close to everybody. So, and we're somewhat rooting for everybody. We say we know that guy, we know. And for any listener that is new to the show, Balky, we have to remind them the contest that was won 2 years in a row by Dayo's brother from another mother.
Right.
How many people play in it?
This year, it's well over 16,000.
Okay, so there's over 16,000 teams. So we're in a situation where, I'm leading a Fantasy Pros division, and I say, hey, this team's pretty good. I've got a 60, 70-point lead here. I'm going to go see where I am on the leaderboard. Oh, I'm in 2,000th place. How cool this is. And then you think about it, well, that puts me in the top 15%. It is such an unbelievable accomplishment. So, congratulations to you guys. And, hey, more people should be tuning in to First and 15. When's your next show?
We'll see, right? We just
you see, you got to be in the club, Balky. You got to know. You got to have a secret knock.
Here's the crazy thing about that Abby. The crazy thing about the Abby victory, if y'all recall, was that second time he won, he did not have a kicker.
Right.
The whole
the championship round. He didn't have a kicker.
He didn't have a kicker at all. So he won with 9 players. So it was crazy. And the day he won, I called him, right? I was like, hey, Abby, because it was before it actually was finished. I was like, Abby, man, have you looked at the leaderboard? Like, I think you're gonna win. He's like, I don't want to look. I was like, bro, I really think you're gonna win. Like, you should look at it. It was just a crazy night. It was just surreal. I mean, definitely happy for him. My wife, everybody in my house, we were all excited. So So it was cool, man. It's kind of shocking, honestly.
Totally. And it's like, it reminds me of that scene in Moneyball where Brad Pitt's, as Billy Bean, his daughter calls him when he's on his way to see their AAA team in Visalia or whatever. And they're going for the 20th win in a row. And he's like, I'm not looking at the score. I don't want to hear it. She calls him like, no, you need to turn around and go to the game right now. And he's like, no, I'm good. And then he hangs up with her, turns on the radio, finds her up 10-0, off the highway, back to Oakland to watch the game, which is what Abib, I would assume, did the same thing as well. Listen, I feel like we barely scraped the surface tonight. One thing I do want to ask you. So, correct me if I'm wrong. You're in Houston. What are you doing for a living down there when you're not dominating the FantasyPros Championship?
So I'm an optometrist. So I'm an eye doctor. For those that are not aware what that is, but I tell my patients all the time, my full-time job really is a father. When I go home and deal with my 2 little girls, at the house, it's like when I go to work, it's like when I get to take a break, right? When I get to actually relax and breathe a little bit. So, but no, I'm an optometrist. I have my own practice out here. Been practicing my own practice for the last almost 10 years.
Nice.
Also work at the University of Houston with students sometimes, and just kind of do my thing with all that.
That's awesome. Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
A good career. A real good career.
Sir.
Obviously then all your patients can see the draft board. It's a good thing.
Right.
If they saw your draft board this year, they would see that you got neighbors at the 4-4. Now, I play in Fantasy Pros and in the FFPC with my longtime playing partner, a fellow named Trevor Holt. And last year, Trevor wanted Pickens and I wanted Pittman. We took Pickens. Damn it to hell. That was the wrong. But this year, and he gave me prompts for picking up Jennings and putting him in the lineup last week. But he also brought up the fact that this year, when it came up, we could have had neighbors, and I said Pittman. And so it's a bad decision. I don't, I think Neighbors is playing like a first-round draft pick, early second-round draft pick. What's going to happen next year? Can he keep up this pace in this offense? That's what amazes me so much because he's not getting a whole lot of help. And, why? I guess, I had my chance to be smart like you, and I wasn't. What made you smart at 404?
I mean, for Neighbors, so I'm a value drafter, honestly. I like to take players that I think are going later than they should be going, just to kind of create a team with value, I would much rather go into the tournament with the Malik Neighbors team that I got in the 4th round compared to a Malik Neighbors team I got in the 2nd round, we both have Neighbors. It just allows better value on the team. With Neighbors, I just thought he just fell too far, right? Like, I think the pick before that I took like Debo. And then I like Debo. I definitely liked his value, but I think I was considering Neighbors at that time as well. And then when he fell to me, it was like, okay, easy pick, right? Regardless of my roster construction. So yeah, I mean, I got a fair amount of Neighbors. I actually have a Neighbors at I think 412 in one of my teams.
Wow.
So there was a time, I mean, people weren't really that high on Neighbors. I think it was really more so before camp. The first place team right now, I think I drafted in July. So at that time, Neighbors hadn't had the hype that he had going into, really in training camp and going into the season. I think he eventually ended up in the 2nd round or maybe the early 3rd. So, I definitely am excited I got him that late in a fair amount of my draft. So.
Well, he's such an elite ball player, and I suppose if we had listened to what the front office of the Giants, we focused on the fact that they were trading Barkley. You remember, what's the show, Balky? The first is it
First and 15?
No, that's
you're talking about Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks. Yeah, the Hard Knocks with the spring with the front office. If we had listened to them talk about Neighbors, we should have known. We could have listened to those guys.
I mean, at the end of the day, we still have to be slightly concerned about his quarterback, right? Like,
that was my follow-up question. That really was what took me away from him. Is you can't be sure about that quarterback, and how's he going to generate touchdowns because the team sure isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the game last night, and I mean, looked like they were like, look, just run a hitch and we'll get the ball to you. You know, just take the ball.
And he was
please,
getting open.
Yeah. So if that's what they're gonna do, I mean, hey, let's keep going till the wheels fall off. And honestly, the way they're using, they might fall off at some point. Hopefully not. Cross my fingers, but yeah. So I didn't. Let's put it like this: if I was as smart as I maybe seem, I probably would have had a lot more neighbors than I have now.
Yep.
But I mean, it is what it is, right?
I do want to point out, this is why I always tell people to draft early, because Dayo drafted this team July 6th. That is in first place overall. Yeah. Debo Samuel, right, 309. Malik Neighbors at the 404. Barkley at the 204. And Breece Hall at the 109. Good on you, my friend. That is fantastic. You talk about being a value drafter. That is on the post that you look up value drafting in the dictionary. Breece Hall at the 109 is the picture they put in there. Congratulations.
Yeah. You showed up on the right night, and then you got to play those guys on the right night, because I went fishing for a compliment, and you guys clapped because I picked up Jennings, but I've got 16 teams. He's on all 16 of them, but he only played in 11 of them. So I walk around, feeling like 5 times a dumbass because of the situation. So I really, it's hard to celebrate when you got 5 times a dumbass hanging on your shoulder.
I mean, that's the hardest thing, honestly, in fantasy, though, right? Like deciding who to start and who to sit. Like you can draft the best team, you can have great depth, pick up the best players on waiver wire, but when it comes time to decide, okay, who are you actually going to put in your lineup? We only have 10 slots, right?
Yeah.
This is not best ball. So you have to really make those tough decisions. And there's a lot of instances where, a player that's more highly touted, better matchup, more confident, you put them in your lineup and they bust, while somebody has a worse matchup, less value, they end up hitting and they're just sitting on your bench, kind of like like Jennings, like you're saying now. So I can't fault it. Sometimes this is about luck and circumstance, and, that's the game we play.
I think you got to make your own luck. Now you've talked about your friend that obviously only needs to start 9 players, but Trevor Holt, my playing partner, just posted, and Balky, you might want to bring this up where everybody can see it. This is what I'm dealing with. Neighbors is a wide receiver number 1. Pittman is on a milk carton. So I'm going to ask you a question, because I do love Pittman. Do you give up on him this weekend, or do you give that young quarterback a chance to get his best receiver the ball?
You mean Pittman?
Yeah.
Pittman.
Oh no, I'm done with him.
You're done.
No, I can't do the Anthony Richardson thing right there. It's crazy.
It's
Anthony Richardson, one of my frat brothers, but I've watched too. I mean, he's in our division. We played in the first game of the season. Like, I can't trust that arm. I can't trust that offense, and I would love to. I honestly kind of wish they put Joe Flacco in, right? Maybe, because then I'll be all aboard. But right now, until I see it, and I don't even know how they're gonna utilize Josh Downs yet. Like, Downs is still a weapon for that team.
Not. You talk about the milk carton. Wow.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ferrell, if that hurts you with all your.
No, it doesn't hurt me. I just believe in the player because I see the potential. But boy, oh boy, it's Balky and I last week on the show, we talked about the need to get the ball to the hands of the number 1 receivers in the league. And it happened down in Tennessee last week, and it's happening some other places. I just –
Wait, you said it happened in Tennessee, so you think Hopkins is the number 1?
Yeah, he was last week.
Okay.
Part of that was Alexander, too, because Alexander followed Ridley around the field, and Stokes was on Hopkins.
Ridley put up a goose egg, did he not?
He had 1 catch. He was there. Dayo, let's go to this question from Michael Kunzel on YouTube right now. You're talking about Anthony Richardson. Would you bench Anthony Richardson in favor of Andy Dalton against the Bengals this week?
Honestly, I would still probably go with Richardson just because of that running floor.
Right.
I think if they actually utilize his skill set, fantasy-wise, he'd be great. I just don't think he's good for the options around him, his ancillary pieces. Now, with that being said, this is the revenge game for Dalton going back to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Just got that started getting everybody's excited. I don't know if I fully believe it yet. I wasn't. I mean, I guess y'all Raiders fans. I was watching when I started the show. I saw your Raiders stuff, so I don't know how good they are as a defense and how that matchup was for the Panthers last week. I kind of want to see it one more time. If I was shooting for the moon, I mean, why not, right? Because not a lot of people are playing Dalton, and you can kind of get ahead of the field. But who I trust more, it'll probably be Richardson, because even his bad games, he's still putting up fantasy numbers. You just have to hope he finally puts it together for, the 60-minute period.
Dayo, last week, Buccaneers-Broncos game, Bucky Irving, 9 carries, 70 yards. He also had 3 catches for 14 yards. Rachaad White was still involved, but Rachaad White didn't touch 40 yards total in that game. How close is Bucky Irving to being a flex play in the FFPC this week?
I think he's a flex play now, actually. I mean, the last few games he's played, a lot of people probably didn't have him in his lineup, but he still produced maybe average 7-8 points, which is not bad. The great thing about it this week is we finally got the bat signal a little bit. Like, the team actually came out and said they want to use him more. And when the team actually says that, I wouldn't be surprised if we wake up Sunday morning and, Jay Glazer comes out and with the message that the Buccaneers decide today they're going to put Bucky Irving as a start, stuff like that. It wouldn't surprise me at that point, and it would be like, great, because I got so much Bucky. With that being said, I mean, I'm wishful thinking, right? With that being said, the Bucs still like White. They like his pass protection. So I kind of want to see how that kind of plays out. But if I was in need right now and I need somebody to fill the flex, I mean, you're having players going down every day now. Olave, like y'all just said, went down today, which is crazy. Devontae Adams out of the blue. I didn't even know he was hurt. Like, I don't know where that came from. But if you have these gaps in your roster, then hey, I wouldn't mind putting Bucky in. He hasn't even scored a touchdown yet. So everything he's done so far has just been off straight running the ball and a few pass catches. So
yeah, and you're right. Something just happened in Washington that is a real break, and you've talked about guys that are like your brothers. I have one that I draft with that I've known, since we were 12 years old, my buddy Fenton, who is a late bloomer in fantasy football. And he'll come to the live draft and he'll sit in and he'll have a few things to say. And usually he's like talking to the neighbor about, I say, quit talking to the neighbors. They don't want to be disturbed. And then he goes up and he's getting the chicken tenders and he complains because there's not enough white gravy for the chicken tenders and all this, and everything. But in the 8th round, he leaned over to me and said, "What about Brian Robinson?" And I said, "That's golden. That's exactly where I need to be." And I don't think any of us, I've been very happy with Austin Eckler's production. And I think the team's going to miss him and I'm going to miss him. But who isn't going to miss him is Brian Robinson's owners. He's getting a bigger piece of the pie to start with, and now he looks like he can carry all they give him. And I've been thrilled with this player. All this other list of fine players that you have, Brian Robinson's not on that team either, is he?
He is. I don't see him on your first place team. I do.
You're not on the first place team?
No, I don't see it.
Well, give the rest of us a chance.
But Dayo, yeah, I do know that you have him on a bunch of teams.
Oh, so many. And real quick, before I even discuss this, your buddy at the live draft, see, that's something I would do because I'm trying to distract everybody. Like that's the end that I would think about. Like,
he's distracting me. The neighbors aren't concerned, and he's like, getting that white gravy all over himself and bitching and moaning.
Get everybody look at me over here. Don't pay attention to your board. But but Brian Robinson, I mean, I liked Brian Robinson last year. Honestly, I think the way he performed for somebody that was underrated, nobody really thought he was the fastest, the biggest. Obviously the Commanders weren't a team everybody was excited to roster, but he still was producing a fair amount, in my opinion. And then you go into this year, new coach, new offensive system with Cliff Kingsbury, new quarterback who everybody was telling me had some Lamar Jackson in him. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. They talked about having a faster pace offense. They got rid of Antonio Gibson. Personally, I thought Eckler was cooked. He might not be. We'll see. He's looked pretty okay thus far, but I didn't think Eckler was that much of a threat. And the crazy thing is, like on our show one time, we were talking about this exact scenario when we looked up the ESPN depth charts, which at that time was, projected or whatever. And they had Eckler as a starter. So I was like, oh, so there might still be a lot of people out there that believe Eckler is the running back 1 and Brian Robinson running back 2. It's like, if that's the case, I'm going to load up on as much Brian Robinson as I can, and hopefully it works out for me. And it kind of has thus far. Last last week, I was kind of saved by a touchdown, but points are points, so I'll bank that.
Points are points, and you've been collecting points with Brian Robinson. I think you're going to continue to collect points.
He's not a fraternity brother, too, is he? What fraternity are you in?
Kappa Alpha Psi.
Oh, yeah, Kappa Alpha Psi.
Yeah,
my roommate in college was a Kappa Alpha Psi. Butchie Dickerson.
Yes,
I got him through Rush. It was hard.
Those some good guys right there, man.
Got on through.
Speaking of good guys, there's some good guys catching balls from Matthew Stafford, not named Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp right now. Tutu Atwell at the top. 4 catches, 93 yards against the vaunted San Francisco 49ers last week, Dayo. Is that a sign of things to come? How are you treating the Rams wide receivers until Nacua and Kupp get back?
I'm treating him like the wide receiver 1 right now. When the first injury happened with Puka, I was, everybody, Kupp was obviously rostered and everybody was shooting Kupp up their boards because of his week 1 performance. But I saw the way Tyler Johnson looked. And it just I didn't realize Tyler Johnson went to the Rams. I remember from his Buccaneers seasons and how he had all this potential, but he just couldn't ever put it together, or Brady didn't really trust him. I was like, okay, he's back, and he had a pretty good game, so he's the guy I was picking up. But then when Puka got hurt, not Puka, Kupp got hurt. I said, okay, now it's almost like a clean slate. Now all of them are options, and I think Atwell did a little bit week 2. But then this past week, he actually functioned like the wide receiver 1, in my opinion. Now, that's not to say much. The Rams didn't have that great of a game. It was a struggle. They ended up winning, but their offense didn't, click. But he's a second-round draft capital guy. He's been in the system a few years now. The coaches trust him. I think out of every receiver on their roster besides Kupp, he's the longest tenured Ram.
Yeah.
The Rams know how to put up points, right? Like we're in a position now where we're just trying to get somebody that has the potential. Like I'm not really trying to chase floors or anything like that. I'm trying to chase somebody that can actually give me something big. And if he's going to operate as the wide receiver 1, that's the guy I want to take. So I think he's real cheap right now. I picked him up several leagues and I didn't have to put too much fab. Actually, I overbid in quite a few, which is kind of annoying at times. But
yes.
But
not when you get a good player. No.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not to complain too much, especially if he comes through. But I'm definitely betting on him. Now it's not a exact science. I'm not 100% confident, but if I was to put a bet on one of those guys, it would be Atwell. And again, he has that long ball, so he has the potential to give me a good amount of points for like 1 or 2 plays.
Yep, Ferrell, upside and big plays win fantasy championships. Tutu Atwell has both right now, man.
I've heard something about it as the product of the University of Louisville. They're using him better as an NFL player than they did here at the university. Hey, can we jump off? Balky, unless you've got a personal interest in it, grumpy Dolphin fan Tom Smith has a wonderful question that I think has a lot more utility than the question that I was going to ask about.
Fire away, yeah.
Estime and Tom. As a grumpy Dolphin fans, and I've never seen Tom Smith grumpy.
I haven't either.
The only thing Tom Smith does that I wouldn't do is he gets to the airport too soon. He beats the airplane to the airport. But what do you do with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and A-Chain going forward in this offense? I know what I think is the guy that I want to avoid. But with go ahead, Balky.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously assuming Thompson and Huntley at quarterback, not Tagovailoa. Obviously, the answer changes once Tagovailoa comes back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the answer for A-Chain is always put him in your lineup. He's the best running back ever in NFL history. So if I have a chance to play A-Chain, he's going to be in my lineup forever and a day. So that's that. As far as the receivers, Waddle I can't play right now. Waddle I can't play right now. He's on my benches right now.
Exactly whatever.
Yeah, there you go. Ferrell got it.
Yeah. I can't play Waddle. Tyreek, that is a decision you have to make. In the past with Tua, he's locked in your roster because he's always going to produce. But right now, he's still probably going to be in my roster. But if I have a better option on the bench, I'm going to play my better option probably until I see the Dolphins function, because they're just not functioning right now. And Tyler Huntley, he's cool, but I remember those Rams years. I don't really think he did much through the air. I do remember running a lot, and he made the Pro Bowl as an alternate or whatever, but I don't think any of the passing numbers were that great. Now, of course, Tyreek Hill is one of those guys, you just put the ball in his hand, he can go. But
Yeah, he can make any quarterback look good. And from a front office point of view, we're building fantasy teams. This is what these guys do for a career. They're building their team. Don't you think if you had, knowing your star quarterback that you just gave a huge contract to, and knowing his concussion situation, that you would have handled the backup quarterback just a little differently? You mentioned we saw the red rifle. There's other backup quarterbacks that can step in and give you a really good chance to win. And I think Skyler's story is still to be told, but now they're on their third quarterback, and just a thought. And I think I look at, that's what kept me away from Waddle. It was Jones. I think I may be pushing it too much to look at who the backup quarterback is, but damn, if you had Waddle in this situation, I mean Neighbors, not Waddle, with Jones. If you had Waddle in this situation, I think he's the clear loser in this offense. And you paid a lot to get him.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's one of those things like, you drafted Waddle based on Tagovailoa being quarterback. And I don't want to say he's quarterback dependent because he's still better than a lot of other receivers out there. But based on how the rest of your draft should have gone, you probably do have better options than Waddle right now, and he needs to be on your bench.
Right. I don't think it's quarterback dependency. I think it's organizational malpractice. Like Skylar Thompson did not look like a true NFL quarterback. Like he didn't even look like he should be a third stringer, right? Like if you you have a quarterback that's not the biggest, has had a history of injuries, major injuries, severe injuries, and you have these grand hopes of going to the Super Bowl, you put this great team together, and then you're going to pay him all this money, you would think you'd have a good backup plan in place. I mean, anybody can get injured any play. And you don't want one injury to derail your whole season. Like you don't want to build a team like that. Same thing with your fantasy team. You don't want to build a fantasy roster where you have one injury and you pretty much have no shot anymore. Looking at you, my CMAC teams. But like they had no backup plan, and I honestly don't understand why they're not calling Ryan Tannehill. They're not trying to make a trade. Davis Mills is available, by the way, if anybody wants it. He's chilling in the back. We got him. We'll wrap him up. We'll send him your way.
I like Davis Mills. I will remind anyone who needs a quarterback, Balky, that Luis Perez is still available.
Luis Perez, and if only the Dolphins would have traded with the Titans to get Malik Willis, we'd be
Malik's
talking
a world
about
beater now.
See
what a change of scenery can do. Malik couldn't even take a snap at Tennessee. You
know what's wild, and I don't know if this is a national thing, but the stuff that they've been talking about in Northeast Wisconsin here is that if you throw the ball in the ground every single play, you get a quarterback rating of 39.6.
It's true,
Malik Willis's quarterback rating in Tennessee was 39. Which means it was worse. It would have been better if he just would have grounded it every single time. It's been crazy to see. What
Malik hears country music. He starts breaking out in a cold sweat, man. He's he don't want nothing to do.
He's not a fan of Broadway. Listen, let's talk about Cincinnati here, Dayo. Mike Gesicki has been very, very good the last couple of weeks for Cincinnati. T. Higgins came back this past Monday against the Commanders, and yet Eric All, the rookie tight end out of Iowa, has 8 catches in the last 2 weeks alone. He's rostered in fewer than 25% of FFPC leagues. In your opinion, is that too low? Is there something here with Eric All in Cincinnati?
If he's rostered in 25% of leagues, then I'm probably like half of those leagues because he's on pretty much, 70% of my teams. I like the guy, right? Like this is a rookie, obviously came to the season. I think he tore his ACL last week at Iowa, the tight end factory, Iowa. But before that, he was in Michigan. But, big tight end. I was going to say receiver because when I see him, he actually looks like a receiver to me. Number 83, I'm like, oh, that's the tight end. But, I was reading up on him in the past. I heard the coach, LaFrenz, I think his name at Iowa, said he loves to block, which is great for a rookie. Yeah. Like he's not just out there just wanting to run routes. He actually wants to kind of get dirty and, kind of muck it up a little bit. Again, like you were saying, he's actually getting targets. Like he just came back off injury and the team is already trusting to put him out there. Appreciate that, Tom. But yeah, so we're playing tight end premium right now, right? Like you're trying to find those gems. Like you don't want these tight ends that are going to give you these, hunky dunky 4 points, 4 to 7 points a week, and you're just getting by. No, you're looking for that guy that's going to kind of take you over the top, and like Logan Thomas was for Abby a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I like Eric All a lot. Again, I don't have him on all my teams. I'm trying to kind of sneak him in. Hopefully the people in my leagues don't see this episode before Sunday, so I can kind of throw those in Sunday morning during waivers. But
don't post the show, Balky.
Yeah, right. It's not like the show. It's not like we're live or anything. So we're good. We're good.
Follow up tight end question or comment on all. We could have got him at a much cheaper price. I'm 88 miles down the road from Cincinnati, so I should have been paying closer attention. But we should have got him at a cheaper price if he hadn't have done well on Monday Night Football. And you get out and you get on television and everybody sees it. Now, you being in Houston, and I can tell that there's a little bit of that navy and red running through your veins. I can tell, and I want you to tell me. You've determined now that Pittman will not bloom this year. I think Dalton Schultz is suffering from a lack of sunshine too. Can Dalton Schultz become similar to the 65-catch red zone target that he has been in the past before this season ends?
So when the season started, I would probably say if I was to bet the over-under, I'd probably go the under, right? Yeah. Because we have all these new weapons. We have, not new. We just added Diggs, but we had these high hopes. We want to kind of have this aerial attack. We brought in Mixon as well. And Schultz is cool, but you would think he's no higher than the third option in the pecking order now, passing, likely more so the fourth option. So, he was going to suffer. Now, they did give him a new contract this summer. So, you always kind of follow the money a little bit. But I would have said the under. Now, with that being said, we just lost Brevin Jordan, the backup tight end last week, who
he's getting snaps, isn't he?
Yeah, he did play a lot. Like he actually was being utilized. He's being utilized in the backfield. So we lost him for the season. The only other tight end we have on the roster right now is the rookie Kate Stover from Ohio State, who's still kind of learning the position. So I say all that to say Schultz will probably now start dominating the snaps a little bit more. Keep in mind, Tank is out this week. Yeah. So, with the Jaguars having a weaker pass defense, Schultz has an opportunity to produce. So maybe he kind of comes through this week. But if you were trying to invest in him in the long term, I'd be a little bit nervous.
And I don't think it's necessarily been quarterback dependent. I've seen Schultz looking at his hands. So, the ball's been there and he hasn't caught something.
Yeah, he was having those problems last year too, but we kind of put a blind out of that.
Well, we'll see if he can get on the road because I think he's a very good player. And back to tight ends in general, I don't think any of us are going to bet that Gesicki and Ertz can complete a season and have the success that they're having now, mainly because their bodies, may not the wear and tear.
Especially Ertz too. I mean, that's the concern I have with him.
But with Gesicki, we don't know, but we would assume all would take that role if something happened with Gesicki, right? With Ertz, I want to believe it's Ben Sinnott, but I don't think he's played at all this year.
Yeah, blocking a little bit,
sparingly.
And so when or if Ertz gets hurt, are we sure Sinnott is the next man up, or are they going to bring in Cole Turner or something, or re-sign Logan Thomas? I don't know. I'm not sure how that plays out yet.
Well, and the other issue too is if Ertz gets hurt, maybe Daniels just doesn't even focus on that position. Maybe it's a Robinson Eckler thing, and maybe McLaurin and then these other guys that the other receivers there get more action. We just don't know.
Maybe Austin Eckler comes back and catches 100 passes.
Go play tight end. Let B-Rob hold down the running back.
I'm here for tight end Austin Eckler for sure.
Hey, Balky, do we have time to ask a running back question from Cincinnati?
Please, absolutely.
Moss and Chase Brown. I'm a big Chase Brown fan. We have a draft. Part of our draft is on the Kentucky side at the Cincinnati Airport Marriott. We have a live draft up there, so we draw a lot of guys on the Kentucky side that are big Bengals fans. And I thought they would be a little more aggressive on Chase Brown this year. They were not. I think they're aggressive now. I like what I see in this player. Going forward, who's going to be the dynamic player, or is that the true 50-50 split that we're not seeing in Washington?
So if you would ask what I prefer, what I want, obviously it'd be Chase Brown. He has the breakaway potential. You know, he's the one that has a higher ceiling, in my opinion. He's the younger legs. You know, he's kind of has a little bit of an unknown to him. Like, we haven't seen him in the feature role yet. And we know they utilize him in the passing game a lot. With that being said, from everything I've seen, read, you know, heard from the Bengals, they trust in Moss. And it's not even a thing where they trust Moss only for, you know, the first 2 downs or between the 20s or anything like that. They trust Moss in the 2-minute drill, in the passing game, to start the game, to end the game. Like, they just trust. By the way, Moss scoring that touchdown at the end of this last game. Thank you very much if you're listening, Moss. I appreciate that. But it's like they haven't gave Chase his specific role on their team. He's really just coming in as relief.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can wish and we can say, you know, Brown is a more talented guy. He should get the reps, you know, all we want, and, you know, at the top of our lungs. But at the end of the day, it's all about what the team believes. It's all about what the coach wants, what the coach believes to be the case. And if he believes in Moss, I mean, they gave him a little bit of money. They got rid of Mixon for him, I guess. If the coach believes in Moss, you know, maybe they're good buddies. They go bowling together or something like that. Then it's going to be the Moss show, right? So I'm not here to argue that. I can just play what I see. And right now I see Moss being the guy. So, but I'm holding on to my Chase shares because I actually have a fair amount of Chase. So,
because neither of them were very expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Very good point. Ferrell, I'll let you ask the last question of Dayo here before we call it a night.
Get us a sleeper, buddy. We need a sleeper. Everybody's
for week 4 specifically.
For week 4, okay.
Week 4 sleeper.
Oh wow. Okay. So I was gonna say this earlier, but then I heard the news about Mixon. By the way, I don't know. I don't think Mixon plays this week. Typically, the Texans were pretty like we're not too aggressive in our injury playing players that are slightly hurt, right? Mixon missed the last 2 days. He missed Wednesday and Thursday. He came back today. Typically Fridays are walkthroughs.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much practice he really did. They labeled him as limited. So with all that being said, I think Cam Akers has a good shot of being sleeper this week. All week, man, that game we played against the Vikings, the whole city has been like dogging our offensive line, especially Tunsil, with all those penalties. I mean, they've been hearing it every single day, all the sports radio, all the Twitter spaces, everywhere. I mean, they've been saying things like, you know, take the captain tag off of his jersey, you know, bench him, things like that, you know, like, can we trade Tunsil? I mean, it's been crazy. So as an offensive line, if you're hearing that all week, you would think they would go into this game kind of motivated, like, okay, let's now put our good foot forward. We're back home in Houston, or we're playing against a team that we feel confident we can be a division rival, so we have familiarity. Let's try to, you know, impose our will, put our knee on their throat and really like smash them in. And if Mixon doesn't play, I mean, Damian Pierce is out already. It's going to be the Akers show. I mean, Agumbawale will get some reps, but when they're at the goal line, they're going to give the ball to Akers. We like to run the ball. So he's one sleeper. Another one is same game as actually Parker Washington.
Jacksonville.
Yeah, out of nowhere, right? But last
he's
year
Tutu Atwell waiting to happen.
Right.
In a bit of a different route type tree, but he's
right.
You know, it's interesting you said about the players hearing this, and it wasn't so long ago that players didn't pay a lick of attention to the radio shows, the newspaper. They didn't read it, they didn't listen to it, and then came Instagram. And now the players, you know,
they're paying attention. They're checking, they're searching their names and see what people are saying.
You just say can't avoid it, and you know, if they can avoid it, the missus can't. And it's just. So
Parker Washington, like I said, he got those opportunities last year. He did well with them. Gabe Davis, I think, is kind of hurt right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with Christian Kirk. Like, they're not using him as much as I would expect them to use him. But if Gabe Davis is out, Parker Washington is a deep DFS sleeper. And then my other guy is actually going to be a guy y'all mentioned, which Ferrell, you mentioned him, and I'm surprised you even mentioned him. Like, it shocked me. I was in backstage like, oh my gosh, he said my guy, but Elijah Higgins for the Cardinals. This guy was drafted by, I don't know if he was drafted or he was undrafted for the Dolphins.
No, he drafted late, but
okay.
he was drafted.
Okay, yeah. So he was a late draft pick for the Dolphins. I want to say he was a converted receiver. And then he just didn't make the team, and they cut him, and he signed with the Cardinals last year. I don't think he got much reps last year, but this guy has the receiver prototype. And losing McBride, so.
And he's a true tight end. I mean, one of the problems is that you get these guys that play tight end, and you say, oh, they're going to use him in a slot. Likely's having a little bit of this problem because when Likely's on the field in the slot, he's got a different kind of defender on him. And now he's having a hard time creating any kind of space.
Yeah.
But Higgins, when he was at Stanford, was in that spread offense. And God forbid they were playing behind all the time too. And, so the balls were in the air. He's got good hands and can catch it. So I don't know about the future going forward with him because he's backing up one fantastic player. But I think I wouldn't mind having him on the team.
59 catches, 700 yards, and 2 touchdowns in his senior year at Stanford. 6th-round pick by the Dolphins in 2023 as well. Yeah. Good stuff tonight, Dayo, from not only your insight on how to build a team, but some of the sleepers that you're looking at for week 4 too. People that we're always paying attention to, trying to figure out who do we utilize to occupy those final few spots on our roster every single week too. Go ahead.
Can I add one thing? Or 3 things, mate. Real quick. I'm sorry.
3 things. Go ahead. I'll give you 4, man. Yeah.
Shout out to Chris. But so 2 players I'm actually a little bit nervous about people playing this week that I would avoid, or I'm a little hesitant, right? Mm-hmm. Number 1 is Rashawn Johnson. I know everybody, was picked up in waivers like crazy everywhere. People spend a lot of fab. They probably want to put him in the lineup this week. They're hearing the Browns want to give him an extended look. I mean, the Bears want to give him an extended look. I'm not sure how that's still going to play out, right? Swift is not going. I'm not gone. Herbert is not gone. That Bears offensive line is horrible. I would just be nervous to just throw him in there. I know people are desperate at this time, but and I understand the matchup is also soft, but I would be nervous. And the second guy is Naylor for the Vikings. Yeah. If you watch the way he's been scoring points, it's been real opportunistic. Like, they're not really utilizing constantly. And on top of that, Addison's been gone, who's supposed to be back this week. So taking that into account, I wouldn't expect the same type of production. Now, with that being said, he had a good training camp. They still might use him, but I just wouldn't be as confident playing him as I was the past couple weeks.
But you should have confidence in your decision makings because you've earned it. And I will tell you that you do not impress me as a man that lives in fear. And it's okay to be nervous, but when you come to Kentucky, if the nerves hit, we've got bourbon for that. So we'll be okay. We will be okay, and it'll be Balky's drinking something now. So
this is not bourbon. This is not bourbon. This is actually whiskey. But yes, it's close. It's close. Dayo, so good stuff from you tonight, honestly, and you bring it. This is the taste of the First and 15 podcast that you and Abib and Chris do all the time. It's great stuff. It's one of my favorite shows because there is not enough stuff out there with high stakes players who are exposing themselves to the grind, the drafting, like everything that goes into becoming an FFPC champion. Obviously, Abib has done it twice. You're on your way right now, first place in the FantasyPros Championship. Congratulations on that. That's awesome stuff. Yeah. We will continue to listen to the First and 15 podcast. We will follow it on the X at @first_15. And of course, follow you on the X at __ Dayo. Doc Noop. It is Dayo Adeseye. So good to have you on the program tonight, leading the FantasyPros Championship. Continue to listen to First and 15. Thank you so much, my friend. This was awesome.
Thank y'all for having me. It was great, honestly. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the next one.
You got it.
Yes,
well, but next we're going to have you on when you're holding that $1 million check for sure.
Amen to that.
Thanks, Dayo. Be good, man.
All right, man. I'll take it easy.
Good luck in week 4. Dayo, the machine, Dayo Adeseye, joining us on the program tonight. Ferrell, I didn't have a chance to get to the emails tonight, but good thing is we kind of covered a lot of the content of those emails already in the program, so I don't feel guilty about it at all. So Ben in Chicago and everybody else, hopefully you're happy with what turned out to be an extended High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Ferrell is the commissioner of KFFSC.com, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Enjoy the Raiders and Browns from Allegiant Stadium in person on Sunday with the Dizzle. I am extraordinarily jealous. I know you'll have a great time. Hey, how about we do this show a week from today? Sound good?
We'll see you then, Bogey.
That is Ferrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the co-host with the most, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, hopping aboard the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight, as he does each and every week on this program. I want to thank him. I want to thank Dayo, Adeseye, and the FFPC. Rob, Bryce, of course, each and every one of you for hanging out and watching tonight. The HSFF Hour will be back next Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Main event, Week 3, FFPC second place team owner, Josh Becker will be our guest. Be a fun conversation with him. 2 straight guests out of Texas. This is going to be great as Josh Becker joins us next week. In case you missed the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown this past Tuesday night, it was Week 1 FantasyPros Championship, 5th place team owner and Fantasy Empire podcast co-host Dan Williamson, who hopped aboard with me. Great episode, a lot of fun on that. Check it out on the YouTube socials in case you missed it. Next Tuesday, the Week 2 FFPC main event leader, Scott Johnson, will join me at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday night. In case you missed last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, RotoViz's Blair Andrews and I chopped it up for 2 hours. It is the definitive pregame Thursday night football show out there. We led you right into the game. We had a blast. Hopefully you can join us live next week. In case you missed it, YouTube socials, our YouTube FFPC socials is where to watch it. We will go live at 7 p.m. this coming Thursday. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft, no salary cap, just fun. $35 or $200 to enter. Win up to $2,500. No stacking in this. You're playing one player per NFL team in the same format of the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge. 10, 30, and 100 team contests available now at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends and enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be, again, this coming Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Good luck in week 4. Hopefully the ball bounces your way. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One other thing I should mention, in case you were not aware, there are 2 Monday night games again this week. The Titans and Dolphins getting underway at 7:30 Eastern Time on Monday night. And then 45 minutes after that, probably the main card of the night, it is the 3-0 Seahawks taking on the 2-1 Detroit Lions. So 2 Monday night games. Obviously, some injury issues to be aware of. Sounds like Laporta is going to be fine, but you never will know with Kenneth Walker and some of these other things with the Dolphins starting quarterback, so on and so forth. Make sure you are set to go on Sunday with some replacements because there are 4 teams playing on Monday night. Be good. I love all y'all. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk with you on Tuesday, or this show will go live on Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern.